Welcome to Champions Network TV, and good evening, and wherever you are joining us from, or good morning or good afternoon. And this is where voices meet the world's conscience. And tonight we gather under a theme that could not be more timely or more urgent: the Africa at the crossroads, global solidarity, systemic risks, and the agents of preparedness. Our continent stands at a pivotal from climate shocks and all other things, but I will not preempt this. We have got seasoned people in our midst, and to start us off, Tina Vamakombe Umba, all the way from Mutare, but now residing in the city of cities in the United Kingdom, in London. Vamakombe, welcome.
Thank you. Right. This is a rather complex topic. It encompasses global solidarity, systemic risks, agent of preparedness. Do we understand what constitutes a pandemic? I think that will be my home point or home port. I would start from there. Do we even understand what constitutes a natural disaster? If we do, what are the nature or structures of preparedness as when such things do happen? I think this is where everything goes wrong. Do we have our preparedness structures or clusters to manage any eventuality that come our way? Each time we tend to have these pandemics or poor preparedness structures, we seem to harness other countries like South Africa or something like that. We have had situations where we have had natural disasters. We were calling for helicopters from other countries. I remember very well Mozambique had a flood once upon a time. They had to call other countries to try and rescue people to safe ground. So those are telltale signs of poor preparedness. So how do we manage this? Do we just simply rely on Red Cross and Oxfam? And what are those companies conveniently producing for our mother country in terms of solutions? Is it not proper that we should have our own Red Cross? Is it not proper that we should have our own Oxfam? Is it not proper that we can create our own cluster formulations to ensure that we are in a position to manage any eventuality in the form of a disaster? We are a disaster-prone region, so henceforth, we must be in a position to have these structures in place. But do we have these structures? So I open the topic to the public or to the panel, and let's explore whether we understand the concept of preparedness. And similarly, if we understand what constitutes a pandemic. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Whether you are joining us on YouTube, we also need your contribution. This is a topic he has come up with, first of all, asking us, do we understand what is a pandemic and what is preparedness and a whole lot of things? So we welcome your comments, we welcome your contributions. Over to you, Jenna.
Good evening, viewers. Good evening, everyone. And I'm always one person who is kind of becoming controversial because of liking of my Africa. So firstly, I want to throw stones to the story that is on the board there. Whose pandemic? Because firstly, you find people describing a pandemic or a pandemic in their sense. And then anyway, because of this globalization and this movement from one planet to the one, from one continent to the other, eventually we also at times, most of the times anyway, end up inheriting that pandemic. Yet that pandemic at times it has got a prescription that is also being that has been made already. Now, if you say Africa is at the crossroads, and then that global solidarity, yes, we are really at a crossroads. What brings the crossroads is that we have our own living means and standards that keeps us alive and that has kept us thus far, of which we're kind of comfortable with that. But the only problem is that we have, like we've alluded or to, and we've discussed that in other platforms there, where we say the way we get around our problems is slightly different. But there is, because of the globalization, there is now what is generally accepted. I don't know whether it is by vote or by what, to say this is the right way of doing it. At times, when even when it is working for us, we are actually blamed for that because it's not the right way. But anyway, so on the preparedness, it depends on the type of pandemic that will be actually facing.
We've got a situation whereby Jenna is trying to lecture the world on correct political correctness. Yeah? You are
Yes,
saying
yes,
there are certain aspects which we need to define as correct, and who polices is correct.
got me right there.
That's a long and short story. Let's start. Let's start with the comprehension of what constitutes a pandemic. Pandemic is when a disease or new strain of existing disease spreads worldwide. It becomes a global issue. It becomes a global story. When it becomes a global story, it encompasses other respective entities affecting activities of daily living. So children are affected, industries are affected, and so on and so on. We witnessed this during the COVID pandemic. Industry was paralyzed, health services was brought to its knees. So those are the core issues we need to start to understand from the forecourt. Otherwise, if we just simply think, who defines the pandemic? It just can only be defined when you die. When you start having a death in your system earlier than regularly, then you begin something is really wrong. When you see dead bodies in the street, like it happened in Italy, then you start seeing that you start identifying that something is wrong. But the core issue here is, how do we resolve these pandemics? How do we identify them? Do we have a structural entity to facilitate that? Look, as when this happens, this is the action plan. Do we have an action plan do we have an African action plan like Oxfam or Red Cross, or we just simply rely on these big NGOs? Where is Africa when we talk about this pandemic management? Do we rely on our bush medication or whatever.
Right. On there, we're talking
or-
about okay. We're talking about the level of preparedness, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're asking. That's what you're talking about, Makombe, there to say the level of preparedness.
Mm.
You are right in some sense when you're talking about that. For instance, the pandemic that is recently been experienced, that COVID-19. But also, if you look at the way it was handled and the basing on the mortalities or the fatalities, right? To say how many people were dying, because that was how they were measuring the effect of that pandemic. Now, if you look at the numbers and the exponential growth in numbers that was happening in Western countries, and then vis-a-vis what was happening in Africa, even when at peak periods when that pandemic was there, you will find that when you say level of preparedness, yes, you can say they in the Western countries, they were very prepared. But if you look at what was really happening on the ground, we were prepared, but not prepared the Western way.
No.
Right. Okay. Let's bring it down to the smaller. How does the natural disasters and the pandemic differ?
Natural disasters can be anything. It can be a flood.
Yeah, it can be
Pandemics
small,
are
particular,
specific
but yeah,
diseases.
it can just affect a small thing, a small village or a small community. Whereas the pandemic, you are not talking about the
The Nyanga
international thing.
disaster. The Nyanga
Yes,
disaster.
that was a natural disaster.
Yeah.
But where I'm coming from is the moment we have structures to address natural disasters, then we can then replicate this to respond to I don't know.
But said this
No,
is
the
not
problem is that now, if you look at a pandemic, for instance, of a disease, you cannot put the same structures. For instance, you're talking about a natural disaster whereby an island is swept by the sea,
Chimaniman.
and the structures cannot be the same as a disease.
Malaria. Or typhoid.
Yeah, as much
But the thing is, when we are talking about Red Cross and when we are talking about Oxfam, their structures are robust enough to respond to even when countries have got natural disasters, and if we have got pandemics, they have got structures that.
Instructors that want a helicopter going to Mozambique.
So the question is, where is the issue?
We need to facilitate structures for these eventualities. We need to have dedicated NGOs of a local nature who understand our terrain and needs. Right now, we are getting a team of British people with some small dogs and trying to see if they can find, what happened here or what did not happen here. They don't understand our terrain. You send them to Nyanga, they'll disappear there. So, I mean.
I'm very skeptical when it comes to the story of NGOs, because if you look at NGOization, how those things come into existence and what at times they do behind the backs, you cannot rely on
NGOs
them.
are political arms.
Number one.
Yeah, that masquerade is they try to present what we call a warm heart approach, that we are here to help. But amidst that help, anything is possible.
Right. Yes.
Because if you identify that certain issues in certain countries, when they say, "Oh, right, we need to evacuate our people from a certain country," NGOs become very active. Suddenly, overnight, they become militant. Then you start asking, were they soldiers before? Was this part of their training or what? And so on. So these are some of the things we need to understand. There's a certain militant politics we need to.
The preparedness that you are saying, does Africa have institutions like the USAID that you are talking about and those
USA,
big organizations?
we were kicked
We
out of
don't.
USA because it's Naidu. If
But
there was USA, we would be all right. Yeah?
yeah, the problem is our resources. Of course, yes, some of them
Don't
are
talk of
maybe
resources.
misused.
Let's
That's what
start
I'm
from
talking
there.
about.
Let's start from there. Resources. And they touch in the
Politics.
Which resources did we spend?
We own everything.
There are various countries. Waipa mota, waipa zikafu, ufu, and so on. They were funding those activities. Maona. Wamwachautisa mvura maraini. Mutautaitaza isi kugadzira mvura. Kugadzira matepe emvura in various areas.
You see now the wrong prescription that we get now. Kuti takuitwa zokunzi you are given the fish, not kuti you are taught to how to fish.
Yeah.
We don't go in getting the fish.
Hataimbotadza kugadzira matepe kuti vanhu vedu vamwe mvura yakachena.
So that's where we must look.
Because takadya mari. Ungatatawo takadya mari. Ngatitangire ipapo.
Vakadya mari, vakadyawo mari makombe pamari yakadyiwa.
Ini hangu handina.
Saka ngatizoti vakadya mari ndanani?
Hatizivi manje.
That's the story whereby ngekuti uri kudya chikanzi muriwo une royco soup ikunzi beef flavored uchidya nemublind person oswera ati kuti wandidyira nyama yangu yese nyama kwesiisablisha nyama yangu
yatsika yanga zvatopera.
Okay, but why is it that we Africans, actually we in Africa, the whole of Africa, we are normally taken as victims, or what word can I best use?
Everything evolves around the politics of corruption. We go out and destroy what we already have. If we manage to get it, we abuse it. If we don't abuse it, we just fail to customize it correctly for the benefit of everybody. And that's the story. And there's nothing to it. There's a bale of clothing, a bale of shoes for everybody. You'll find that general will take 10 pairs home. There's a bale of jackets. You'll find that Michelle will take 60 pieces of jackets and so on. We never get enough.
But the whole tribe, everyone must get.
Corruption. Kuti muda kuzoitira mangwana ndarichiitira kuti mwana wazokwaniwo ndozopawo mwana wababa munini wangu kuti adyewo.
But still, the bottom line is still, why give us fish?
Because we accept the fish. It's because we accept the fish.
But do we accept it voluntarily, or it's because we have been manipulated to accept?
Whether fair or foul. But we take the fish. We take the fish. In I stand,
You know,
I
it
speak from the point
extends.
that I'm a premium capitalist, so I do understand how situations work when it comes to money. Because when it comes to money, it's not a situation which no really comes so, because the opportunities only come once and for all. Imima amunyaso understand kuti kuba kuita state unofungira kuti kuba kumana nechinhu waenda hazvisizvo. Kuba hazvisizvo. Learn it from me today. Kuba hakusiko kuti bvudzi wovhotisa nacho.
You put it in the plain sight.
Kuba it's a very complicated institution in Shumba. Shumba, how are you?
Shumba, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Saka,
I
that's
think
what I'm saying. You don't get out of bed kuti ndira kuenda kunoba. Unenge uine constructive intention yekuti ndira kuti chinhu chiri right. But the situation unosangana nayo unotaura kuti no. Panapa ka majaketi andingotorawo tu. Yeah.
I think I want to dislodge Makombe zvekutaura zvemari sterei, because when we talk of money, he's going to lecture us everything on that money story. Let's look at other things like the systemic, those catastrophic risks that are occurring. For instance, such as the biodiversity loss or climate change. How are we prepared as well for such things? What are we doing?
We are at the debate phase for all of that. That's where we are at. Because one, we don't seem to understand what climate change is all about. We just look at the symptoms. And when you try to say, no climate change, climate change, that's the response we get.
Shumba, what do you say?
And if you go the biblical way, those are the signs.
Those are not our issues. Those are the signs. And
Jesus is about to come.
And then you bring a massive
Because we want to talk about preparedness. Otherwise, that preparedness means we must pray a lot. Instead of how can we try to adjust and make things right? At least to can extend further that coming of the Son of Man.
Okay, let's make it soft. All right. We get that out of the way. No animal.
Preparedness. Saka Shumba, and how do we prepare and na Makombe chatisona atina structures which can respond to disaster preparedness, disaster situations, and vajena vakapo my opinions vakudai definition yacho disaster yacho pandemic yacho rumbotaurwa nani.
I think Makombe is very right, but I think he ran away from my term institution. When you say structures, no, I'm just joking with you. I'm just joking. Yeah, it's all about institutions, because you when you talk of all these things, when you haven't got robust institutions, the thing is you just import a narrative. Because right now I will tell you, climatic change, in as much as we are aware it's there, and it's going to have a significant impact on the economies of maybe developing countries. But one other factor we are not putting into realization is it can also be misused for recolonization. Yeah. So there's an instance in Zimbabwe whereby I don't know which country has bought massive tracts of land.
China.
They are saying it's for carbon offsetting. So there are those countries with the deep pockets. We have seen this as an opportunity to recolonize some parts of the world. So they'll come in terms of, oh, we want to do carbon offsetting, and then they pay for vast, large amounts of land, and they're not gonna give you back. It's all in terms of that carbon offsetting. So you need to be mindful. This is where institutions come in. When you have robust institutions within your country, the deal is put on the table, and you've got Wana Jena, Wana Makombe looking at that deal. Is it good for the country? But then in the absence of that, maybe decisions being made by one person, what you have is these countries, powerful countries, just approaching that individual to say, can you make a decision on this? We give you 10 million. And you sell the treasures of the country in the name of climatic change. So it can be a double-edged sword, climatic change, if you don't have robust institutions.
Your boys zofanele dzirikudhavos idzi mukuona
But atisi kudziendesa ka.
The way you look at us is you look at us as if there are no institutions. We have institutions, and those institutions,
Jena.
they are what?
Defunct institutions. Shumba is talking of functionality. Hema institutions yayo. Kwangoti ndine structure yechikoro ndo institution yangu inonzi mukaiswa pasina chiri kuitika ipapo is dead ka. Hapana institution. Hatizoziva kuti mafunctionalities akaita sei, standard setting yakaita sei, things like that.
Which institution where are you finding defunct?
Defunct in all ways. Kana wakuenda kunotsvaga whatever medication you want from left, right, and center, kuimwe pharmacy isina zita. What are you saying then? Something is not working somewhere, isn't it?
When we say there are no institutions, Jenna, what we are saying is, here comes a pandemic. You are expecting other countries to be looking after your populations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you say that's normal? When you expect the UK or the China or Russia or the US to be saying, oh, no, Zimbabwe, this pandemic will bring havoc on Zimbabwe. Let's see what we can do.
We lack preparedness. We lack.
Right. I think, yes, we can talk about it. We cannot say we lack, but we can say maybe we are still small, we've got. Okay, let's look at, for instance, that the previous disaster. I think if you was following it properly, there is Johnson has come up with a what?
Freezer. I think akubata vanhu vanomuisira Starlink.
There has to be. I was just saying there has to be a pioneer in anything. Although it might take so long, but takatopedza kuti tugadzira kuti tweduwo.
January is very. As Paulo Freezer.
Yeah, that's it. As
no, Jenna, Jenna, what we are talking about is not the one man initiative in accomplishing something. when other countries saying they want to do this. You know, us having this exposure, I think you've lived in South Africa. I'll tell you, if you look at the history of South Africa, they will tell you there are some brilliant minds within our communities.
Yeah.
You need then to say, we have got these brilliant minds. Can we create institutions out of them? And then you harness all the power or the strength of the state towards harnessing that dream. But atidaro ukaona history yana South Korea, ukaona history yana Taiwan wetiri kutaura nayo. Taiwan today controls about 90% of the world semiconductors, and it comes through a vision yekuona kuti isusu hatina ma-resources akaita sewamwe, but this is what we can do best, and the state comes to back that kind of innovation.
Manje sototadza solar farm chaiyo.
So isusu in Zimbabwe, I'm telling you, we have got the human resource with that intelligence. We've got the resources whereby we can say, with our lithium, let's make sure we become the world leader in storage batteries, and and the government can even ignore all other things and just all into lithium, and you become a leader. The world over, they have to come to Zimbabwe for storage batteries. And storage batteries, we are just at the beginning. They're gonna be a massive thing going into the future.
Yeah. Especially with AI.
Yeah.
Elon Musk anenge achiitirana nharo nema-Americans, they are not even understanding kuti, guys, let's pivot towards solar and storage batteries. Wana Trump wachiri kufunga crude oil nepetrol.
Right. What tends to happen to Elon Musk? Elon Musk is a political pawn. He says this and he means that. He thrives on divide and rule. So he creates that essential confusion as if they are not together. But backstage, these are guys who are thinking and taking. And you know, come on.
Yeah, I'm very happy. I'm so happy with the news away go. Because kana zvaita zvedu kuno kunobva yaita disaster chaiye kunzi it happens only in Africa or only in Zimbabwe. Yet you are just losing your
kuba kwenyu ndekuti hamusiye mhodzi kaini mubva mabaka manjika nemhodzi yacho
zvinenge zviri zvishoma mubhaibheri makanzi hakuna chivi chiri nani chivi chivi imati muri nani ka mati munosiya chenji ndo nani yamuri kutaura iyoyo yekuti panosarati chenji patinoba
but there's a powerful point which Makombe identified, and I think we can see it among the South, where important issues are discussed, like Davos. My minds are going to find a platform. They are not found there. Who goes there?
Yeah,
that's where the problem is, because I was talking to somebody. My Chinese, wherever they go, I've watched my forums. Our delegates goes wherever they've gone. Side my Chinese, the question is, do they have photographic memories?
Takaende kwaTsambe.
And thumbs up na banda. Banda taura pa comments ako turi kuda mafungiro ako panyaya.
No, but sometimes we feel like zvimwe tinonge tichiseka zvedu, but sometimes it's we need to kana tiri kuda kuchinja magariro neupenyu hwevanhu ka, we need to take things very seriously. We need to plan kuti where do we want to go as a country. Where do we see ourselves as a country in 20, 30, 50, 100 years?
Right.
I think
tinayo 2031 mazana. Tinayo 2030 kuno.
Housing for all takaita ngarini kani chena.
But it's impossible. You can't house everybody. Even when America,
no, you can house everybody. What are you talking about? You can house everybody. You can house everybody. What do you mean? Nasi ndopeta kutadza kuti munhu wese anogara. Uri kutaura kuti madziteteguru edu aisagara mudzimba. Waitadza kuwakadzimba.
Do the West African states has got his house to house everyone.
Apart from we were able to house our people is very true. I remember once upon a time, Kwamtare, kwakune area inzi, Mudangari, Chisamba, and so on. One wanga wasingane kusvikira uchipinda unosvika ubva unonyolesa kwakatsekera ubva upoimba kunana mfako same things zvaitika futi ukasvika iko maarea ikoko kumpare saka which means tatine housing plan yedu yanga iriko kare.
But land is finite. It's a finite resource.
Yes, but this is where planning comes in, Jenna.
Planning essence.
Planning comes in kuti waona kuti your resources are finite, aren't it? So you need to plan for the future now to say, can we keep on building vertically? Yeah, horizontally, I mean. Or shall we start building going up? Yeah. This is why when you go kunana Dubai, you go to kunana China or Anna Beijing, they've started to realize that land is finite. Let's go vertical.
Yeah.
You know.
But do you know where we
Wamakomba hanzi nabhanda ndipe kuti musoro wenyewe mukutaura ndoupi ndipinda.
And Africa at the crossroads. Global solidarity, systemic risks, and the agents of preparedness.
Zvikanzi na praise ataura zvikanzi the problem is we do not want to decolonize ourselves. We still want to be dependent on as Zimbabweans. Only a few have had the exposure to how to utilize the resources available.
The next port of call is exposure. Kana one exposure, she understands she knows positioning. My systems are called your urukugara papi. That is not down. So what I knows that exposure. She's your people. My exposure cycle yako. That's when you start creating circle of friends, like-minded people. You start meeting those imomo because they speak the same language. When you talk about forensic language, do your language actually okay, it's just in a visionary thinking yakadai. Let's push it this way. But it's just at down.
Right. And then I want to come back to the point I'm going to tell you housing. I know you to period zvakanaka. Yekutizo shumba anga kutizo our planning yekuti we should that way planning comes in to play. Yekutizo should we build vertically and all that stories you're talking about to actually promote your idea or support your idea. That brings us back to the story and Akataura the last time. We are so fond of copying. Unfortunately, the way Zimbabwe is taking its route is no way to copy. We've got our own way. If you look at, you are talking of normal urban migration, whereas now it's actually different. Vanhu vari kutiza kuharare kuzotinetsa kumapurazi kunoko. Avari kutoda kuno zvekutodaro chaizvo chaizvo.
I agree.
Tototi ngativake vertical tokope waka vertical yekudini nayo.
We cannot discount kuti, coping is whatever you're trying to say. Modern think tanks, what you copy and paste. Yeah? That's what they're saying
That's
now.
according to when you think there's a standard that you want to look at.
You copy something good and then you improve on it. Yeah?
So where do you want us to copy? Where do you want us to copy? Program like what we are doing.
I concept mauri. The next port of call is visionary thinking.
Which is what we're doing. According to what we are planning it, that's what we're doing.
According to what are you doing?
No, I'm saying according from the plan distribution, which hasn't been done anyway. So there's no way to copy.
But okay, pane nyaya yema-institution pamakaita land reform yenyu, but institution and structures ekuziva kuti how are we going to facilitate this land reform?
It was a wild game.
The institutions were there. There were farmer organizations which were there. Everything was put on paper, and there was a blue paper, white paper, and the blue paper that actually spoke on the land distribution to say, firstly, let's look at the people that have trained in agriculture. Secondly, let's look at the people that have experience in those farms. That is what is on the papers. Then yes, along the way there was some diversion when the war vet story came in and mixed here and there. But still there are institutions and there are plans that is to be followed.
When
you can't blankly say Kapaita mistake, but no, it doesn't work. Everything was completely no way.
Jenna. I think sometimes what we are saying is land distribution was of importance. It was supposed to happen. Yeah. But before you do it, our argument is before you do it, you have to have a strategic thinking. Petikatora minda zvakafanana uchitamba draft iwewe unenge uchitofunga kuti uyu achafamba sei, tinoiti game theory handiti? Uri kuziva kuti your opponents chinhu choari kuda iland yenyu handiti? MaBritish chewaida to keep holding to our land handiti? So isusu in our thinking, our strategic thinking now, we say tikatora land, what are going to be the repercussions on Zimbabwe? And how are we going to mitigate those repercussions? I don't think there was hapana kuwane preparedness in doing that. There was no preparedness in doing that. That's why you saw a collapse of the Zimbabwean economy. Because
wait, Chimira,
the reason why there was a collapse of the Zimbabwe economy is we focused on taking the land and never focused on severe sanctions after this. How are we going to mitigate the effect of those sanctions on our economy? Did we plan for that?
Right.
Yeah, I'll give you.
I think it's responding to your copying and pasting. And the copying, what is relevant is okay. There are times when there is no cause to reinvent the wheel, but to improve upon what has been created and is working well. And he continues then to say, what is politically referred to as benchmarking is selective coping, and that suits our situation.
That's what I was talking about.
Right, number one. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I want to answer. I want to answer Shumba. Do you know that if we go back straight from the curriculum, right? There are some. It was doctored to make sure that we are programmed so that we will never be able to so that we keep on following we were told everything should be formal and this done and that. Do you think with that strategy, apart from the strategy that we took, you think the British were going to say now is the time for you to get the land? Do you think that would have existed?
That's not what I'm talking about, Jane.
But it happens, according to what you say, is it's a strategy. Then the British should do this and that. They were sitting on our heads. We had to go another way. Otherwise, land
No. You are misunderstanding me.
Curriculum, right?
You are misunderstanding what I said. What I said is, Jena, imimi muri mpamenyu anditi tiri muZimbabwe mumpamedza muna muBritish. So patati isusu warume takuda kutora land yedu. Zvinhu zvemaBritish hazvisi kushanda. Anditi.
Right. Plus remember, British plant a lot of people in that family gathering you are talking about. Because we didn't follow the proper way. Because we didn't follow the proper way. If we followed the proper way, it would have been blocked. Because of those stories.
There was no proper way. No proper way.
So let us go that way.
Takaita the proper way. But the proper way haina kuuya nekufunga kwakanyanya kuti these are going to be the repercussions. Are you getting me? We did the proper way. Was the proper way.
We knew the repercussions and we were ready for those repercussions. It was definitely going to be very, very difficult. And indeed, it became difficult.
No, we were not ready.
Syllabus is wrong. What can you get in a paper?
There's a comment from Moses there, and we need to look. He was commenting on the coping and the re-improving and testing, and where he says, "Look at what China is done in the last 30 years. They have not reinvented the wheel, but just improved what the West is doing."
Yeah, we will buy that.
Let's welcome Mr. Magabai. I think your camera is off.
Oh, let me get.
Moses had jumped in as well.
Let me get a phone which has a.
Moses, I can't see him.
Okay.
Moses, you can use that link to jump in so that you can be with us here and we can hear your views.
Where's Magabai going now? Because here we're talking about Africa, but it's actually based. It's not fully Zimbabwe with me only. But
that's what I want. I wanted to. My next comment was
no, Zimbabwe is just a microcosm of what's happening in the continent. It's across the continent. That's why you don't find a success story, because we keep on. All of us are following the same sort of model.
You to lecture the world on
do you know how South Africans emulate that model that Zimbabwe did? If you look at a real black man in South Africa and how he's treated and where he works and everything, I bet you might think that it's over on paper. It's there.
No,
and that getting of the land, it was taking so long because they are trying to use the protocol you are talking about to say there must be a strategy to say after this,
Jenna, you are misunderstanding
40 years coming.
You are misunderstanding me. Even that, what you are talking about, I've written to a lot of articles to the South Africans, the white South Africans. I say, if you think Zimbabwe was a mistake, just wait and see. You'll have a second Mfakane in South Africa. Because the issue of land, it affects all of us. And the idea in Zimbabwe was to you know what they wanted to do, especially with that clause in the Lancaster House Constitution.
Yes, you're coming now right there.
The idea was in 20 years, that's why they say land will be distributed after 20 years. They wanted to get rid of Mugabe and Nkomo during that time. By the time they put on their own opposition, and then they maintained the status quo, where we have got Kenya now, we've got South Africa you're talking about. The reason why the sanctions were so hurting on Zimbabwe, they were sending a warning to South Africa, Kenya, to say, if you do what Zimbabwe did, these are going to be the results. I think
right, so you are right. Just give me a second. So Chumba, so you can now, so you really understand now how we were hit hard. You understand that now?
No, I've always understood that.
Or did you expect us to be so prepared for that hard hit?
Yeah.
I've always understood. Where I'm differing with you, Jenna, is our preparedness. We didn't prepare enough.
Yeah.
We prepared, but because remember we were going to be used
let's hear the views of Moses. Moses, welcome to this powerful panel.
Yeah. How are you, gentlemen?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Welcome.
Very enlightening stuff here. I believe whatever sorry mama title and this go on because I'm on a small screen, but I think you're saying one and the same thing, but definitely we were not prepared. Really prepared. I think something somewhere went wrong. Nobody inini ndichikuraka takakura kuma-80s 90s tichienda kuchikoro uchikwira bhazi tichienda nechikoro green yawaiona kubva senge takaenda kunana chinhoi hai green yawaiona kubva Mount Darwin kunana Mount Hamden wakusvika kunana Banket
unanyapira uchienda kwakadaro
yainyatso. Then suddenly that green went kana people munoza farming is not something, it's a high capital intensive machinery. Yes, yeah. Where is that machinery right now? People harvesting you can't afford that machine, but how did they manage to afford? Model but we went in then we ran down those machines. Now they are more like archives, national archives, combined harvesters. So I think something somewhere went wrong with it. Just take over, smooth transition. Yeah, with it.
I think I understand the monetization.
Yeah.
Why we had the raw bank, banking corporation, bank, and then we just stepped back. I think I understand the essence of my machines.
Yeah. But you can buy a tractor, 5-6 tractors, but you need them to. You need to have a plan with after a few months, not our service. But it's also, I think, one problem. I think I know that my shortcut. I think it's a man.
No.
To maintain, I'm telling you.
This is Mukoma Moses. Marito noda kuburisa. Tunoburisa for the wrong reasons.
But for you need to employ Madism. How many people right now who run those estates can manage to employ a proper.
But then you must understand the background. You look at BMW, beer meat and women. Maria Sarasi.
Guys, I think I will have to take one by one all the people that are on the platform. When did you last come to this place? Because yes, there was a shock of what you are talking about. To say initially there was that shock, and if I tell you what is happening now, it's totally different from what you are saying.
Yeah, totally.
Things have changed. It is adjusted, and there are a lot of things that have been put in place to counter that and to bring back that production. If you look at the production figures, look at how much tobacco has been actually sold this season, and where we are going now. Right now, we are running short actually of the seed from the seed houses of the tobacco, and the land has been prepared and everything. We're cruising. We're not waiting for stories of to say we were crying for Mr. Johnson. No, we finished that story. That was the part, yes. I'm not defending. I'm not defending that we had that glut. We had, but it was actually anticipated because it had to be like that. It wouldn't have come that any other way. You couldn't chat for that Taurana.
No. Ipapo Jena ndobvumirana newe. Petru kupesana newe. Iwe ndobvumirana newe. Petru kupesana chete. Ndepekuti. Inini what I'm saying is unoziya when you approach these matters. Unoda wana jena ma farmers on the table. Unoda ma economists on the table. You need your psychologist, the best talent of psychologists of Zimbabwe on the table. You need all the experts on the table. Guys, mundata akutora zvejampanja. And this is what we are going to expect from the West. How are we going to handle it? I gave you an example, Kuti. One thing we could have done, especially in my pensions, the one who evaporated through my sanctions nekuevaporata kwakaita Zimbabwean dollar.
Sanctions dollarization and what have you?
What we could have done immediately. What we could have done immediately was to say Zimbabwean dollar is anchored to gold. Finish. Once you had that anchor, there was no way they were going to crash your currency.
No, we needed to go the detour way. We needed that.
It's normal. More than the others. It cannot be smooth.
I feel good. There were no brains on the table. We could have salvaged our economy.
The brains were there on the table, but we wanted to find out leeway.
No, there was no brains. There were none.
Okay, gentlemen, my question is, are we, whatever we have done, are we to value because we're still mining, but why isn't it at this stage manufacturing should be done in Zimbabwe? Could the lithium, we have got lithium. Why is it we are not at that stage to attract even China? Why we don't see some factory our more lithium employment? Then they train trained skilled people in that processing. Why is Zimbabwean? What labor is Zimbabwe? Why is it we are not there?
Yeah, I buy that.
Why is it we are not there? Even
South Africa,
even beans, they were not even beans in hectares. Why is it we are not processing beans, but we are buying beans, a can of beans overseas to South Africa?
Mkoma Moses, as we have developed as an economy, negative monetization. Negative monetization. The next person could I don't need to be the manufacturer, I need to be the broker. Saka brokerage equals thieving, glorified. And you can't run away from that. pane premium effect iriko kunzoko yekuti amukwani pamumatebo akadaro wekuti panenge pachitaurwa nyaya dzemari dzakadaro. Kana I can give you a practical example kuti okay, tine tobacco yedu tida kuitengesa privately through BAT kana kuti through Millennium or whatever. Unoona kuti will be outnumbered in terms of your thought process because haumoba muma-systems ari kurana iyayo, hauwanzwisisi pama-systems oh, okay, apa pandaperera.
I think some of the things makombe zvinoitika ndezvekuti there are global agreements on trade and it.
Yeah.
So if you understand, there was what we call the we are partners to them. We had the GATT round of trade and it. Yeah. After the GATT, we had what we call the WTO and it.
Yeah.
What normally happens, we panetwa negotiations iwayo. They could weaker countries akaita sedu. They are only rule takers.
Yeah.
So you find the insistence on the world during that time was free trade. And free trade benefits my developed countries because they want to open your market for their own products. So they will preach that free trade and then open up your markets. Imimi mafarmers yenyu hacha compete ne mafarmers eku France kana kuti mafarmers eku America because these farmers are already subsidized. Saka they dump their produce on you. Dosaka muchizonzwa unzi huku iri kubva ku Brazil iri kuuya ku Zimbabwe, it's cheaper than the locally produced huku because of this free trade. And this is the benefit yekuti Trump auya manje with those tariffs. These are the times that wana Zimbabwe should be waking up. Let's put up these tariffs like Trump is doing, because Trump's argument is he wants to bring manufacturing back to America, and you cannot do it under the auspices of free trade. That's why he's saying we close the borders and we start manufacturing here. This is the same approach we need. Mnana Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe was one of the biggest producers of cotton. Tikauraya our own clothing manufacturing because of used clothing. And this is an opportunity to say no more used clothing. We're gonna start farming cotton and manufacturing. Moses, I think I said the same point again. With our lithium, if we had an industrial strategy, Zimbabwe would be doing what Taiwan is doing with semiconductors. We push the envelope forward in the innovation in lithium and storage batteries, so that the world actually comes to Zimbabwe to learn and to buy products, the storage batteries and stuff, because we would have pushed the envelope and moved the technology so far better than anyone else. So those are the advantages that when you have a strategy, you can know we are going from here to there.
Yeah, right. For once, Chumba and Moses, I'm agreeing with you 100%. Initially, anyway, we've discussed this even before Moses came in to say, remember when I gave the example of the getting the fish, not the way to fish, right? That is where I was going to. If you look at, for instance, the companies that were in Zimbabwe originally, the mafuta and olivine, that right? Then we look at like clothing, and David Whitehead, Contextiles, right? Yeah. And actually, we can name a lot of them, right? But because of some policy lapse, especially when it came to importation, the duties,
policy lapse.
Yes, and the duties. That is actually where the problem came in, and to the extent that the companies they eventually now could not manage to run. Those are of which you are right in saying if Trump actually pushes much more on that, then you can see that our country will start also reviving. For instance, you are talking about lithium. Yes, we don't have the manufacturing plants for that processing of that lithium, right? But because of the embargoes or we can talk about the agreements that we are talking about, Shumba, to say those countries, they don't want to send the equipment so that it can be, remember that global solidarity, for them, it will actually be suppressing and suppressing and suppressing and making sure that we don't rise up to be at par with them.
Areas akadaro. I keep telling you, matables imomo hatisi kugara imomo. Ndambokuudzai kuti ukaenda kuDavos unotidzoka wava mumwe munhu munyowani. Because unonyatsa kuona kuti apa pakati kudzvinyirirwa kapa. Tinoona kunge tine vanhu vari muma-respective tables iyayo highlighting what we are, the debate we are having right.
Right. Hanzi naamara hanzi mhoro imose mose vachangopinda. Saka zvikanzi na Wamakabai, our bargaining power remains low as long as we continue to offer raw materials on the market.
But we are forced to we don't want, nobody wants to send raw materials. But we are forced now. Remember, these people, they've got all the resources. And they look at us and say, okay, you don't want to give us that tobacco. Eat it. We have got the potential to produce, we can do everything. Then we teach them pretend into cigarettes. Then they say, okay, we're not sending the machinery there. You bring it here.
I think, Jenna, I don't think you are right there. Where I think you're missing the point. I think this is the high time actually when we could have, if we understood the geopolitics of what's happening globally, this is when we were supposed to benefit. Because the whole war, the wars that we are seeing erupting, they are all about raw materials, resources. So what's happening now, the countries that have got resources and know how to leverage those resources are actually going to be very, very powerful countries.
Yes.
The problem with us as Africans, we always cry, we don't strategize. That's the problem.
Right.
So right now, when you look at Africa, you saw what that agreement that was signed by Kagame in Washington and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know what the Americans did the previous year? They came and opened that Lobito corridor, which is supposed to take resources of DRC through Angola to America. They avoided China. China has got the Tazara corridor, right? Which they built, I think, in the 60s.
Yeah.
They are taking the resources of DRC through there and through Dar es Salaam. Now we live in a world where the supply chains are split into two, the Western world and the East. So all of them, they are coming to countries looking for resources. So we were at an advantage of leveraging that now to say, we can play these players to say, if you want our resources, this you got to do for us. If you want our lithium, you will have to do this for us. China has got no option because it knows if it doesn't do that, maybe the Western countries will agree to our deal. So we have the power, but we don't see the power that we have.
Right. Let's now begin to think about winding down. We have been on the platform for the past hour or so. For Amara, Henry online, and those who are watching us on YouTube, we invite your comments, your thoughts on this powerful topic. I know it is now centered around Zimbabwe simply because it's a snapshot of Africa as a whole. So let's hear our final remarks, if we can, from those in the house.
So I'll go first. I will say, I think we need to strategize if we're going to make a significant change into the way we do our things. because you need a plan to say, this is what we want to achieve as a country or as a continent. And don't always look at what other countries are doing to you, because they will always do it. It's in their interest to do you harm. So if you keep on crying to say for their benevolence that one day they'll wake up and think properly and give you what you want, it's a pipe dream. They actually benefit from you being in the quagmire you are in. So it's up to you to rise up to the occasion and prepare the future that you want. And you do it by coming together as great minds to say, how can we get ourselves out of this situation? Unless you do that, I think you continue just talking the same narrative day in, day out, and year in, year out. That will be my contribution to it.
Thank you.
Okay, let me come in now with my story, the story of my nation. I know everyone is waiting for the story of my nation. Okay, I'll just say this global solidarity, the way it is being played, especially by the Westerners, is to make sure that they suck as much as they can from the Africa. They also want to suppress as much as they can. So it is very difficult for us to be the role players who can manipulate them. We cannot manipulate them. I know Shumba has been saying, because we are the resource base, let's take advantage of that. And by taking advantage, auction, we set the rules. It is very difficult to set those rules with the current scenario that we have in the world. It is right, yes, everybody wants that. If you look at us, don't look at us like Zimbabwe. You look at us like we're not planning, we're not doing this. We're actually doing a lot of things that other nations actually wonder how we do it. Especially also looking at the sanctions and all those. Remember, Shuma was saying Zimbabwe was taken as as a guinea pig, right, to show that this cannot be done in Africa after the land distribution. It was actually taken to be, this is a guinea pig. We're going to show them that no one should ever follow that. So because of that 14-pound hammer that came and set on us, it became very difficult for us to start rising. But as we are now, I will certainly tell you that we've gone past that 14-pound hammer. We know we are now getting there. They actually are competing already now here for the resources that we have. And at some points, yes, we are still dictating the pace. And then we also have got some other points where we are actually weak, like especially for now, the exporting of the lithium and the soil that I was talking the other day, to say that I'm a 30-ton truck, akatakura ivu, 100 per day, that's not right at all. It will not support that one. But it might be, if you follow the people that are in that industry, they might tell you that that was the only alternative that is there, based on some, you don't know the restrictions that are there in that industry. But if we're given the fair choice, guys, you all came from here. You Zimbabwe, they're not even sitting down to think. Hi, guys. Okay, I'll stop here.
I think we need to adopt a grassroots to identify. And I think Zimbabweans, we need to change our curriculum kutanga ku grassroots. Focus as now we are not is very good practical subject. Tomu groom good way. Really technical drawing, because I think towards academic focus on our curriculum. kuti mwana anopedza A-level haatombogona kana hazive kana any practical hands-on thing haagoni akaita history shona religious education. That should be faced. Titange kubuilda vafana ivavo vadikawo kuti tizive nokuti I think I gave one example yakadaro kuna Taka Mr. Chigodora kuti chief executive weApple akati kuna akabvunza senate akati notamba inini muda kuti ndiunze manufacturing kuno kustates. If I go to Silicon Valley, I won't fill up a classroom tool engineers, which are the backbone Apple to build that. And to go to China, you can fill up a stadium, many stadiums with tool engineers. It's because they're focusing on skill. But ukatona tool engineers anaka 4 or 5 subjects. You know, you can focus on when you identify with now you they build and practical skills. Do you know about groom? Actually, mwana mdiki kusika pesa ashika kana 18 anukuvakira anukumbira Apple yaya ane assembly one. We need to change our curriculum. Yet better put the this was sure we're gonna get 7 one subject already. What to them? Grade 6, grade 7. It's just like I'm going to make English. Well, these are the basic building blocks, but you got to focus on these practical skills. Do you want to build a unique and even I think as long as you rely on England Takambo assembler and my master we will of come to now. We one teach what assembling. We could build. We need those skills, but now it's Zimbabwean. We need my skills. Now my skills, and the talent. I'm going talented more to IT. Do what you know. When you meet someone, I know that's the IT. Don't meet this. History. History ku IT ukoko ega nekuverenga kwega kuti how computers have developed from 1900 to now izvo hazvidi kuti uinoita history yaHitler kuti Hitler akazodai so we don't
Okay.
Okay. In Inangwe, I've got a different dimension to this. My focus, Tambira Bakuti, effective communication. I'm a premium capitalist, and that's how I operate. Effective communication, the way we talk to each other is the way we are going to push our narrative. Maona. So far, narrative is based on poverty. And there's very little success stories, or there are very little success stories being highlighted in terms of development of structures. Tinonesa izvo zvekuti tange kutaura kuti dai takaenda kuIroville kana dai takaenda kuQuest. Takambouraya Quest yacho chii? Ndopatinofanira kufunga ipapo. Because world creation yakabva kuQuest nekuIroville hamungai understand but kada kuitaura nhasi munotoshokeka. An ordinary person overnight made money. Whether anga adzidza kana anga asina kudzidza, but it was an opportunistic structure yakaita avail to them and then they utilized it. Saka izvozvo zvakaunza inonzi positive corruption. Positive meaning kuti chinobatsira asi achibvumidzwe. You see what I mean? So those structures are there and they've not died. Saka munhu wese out there anongoti ona kamukana inini I'll do it. Ndikaona kamukana, I'm not condoning corruption, but I'm simply highlighting that positive corruption has become a theorem of today's monetization structures. Today's monetization structures is now a worldwide phenomenon. Wherever you go, they're talking about it in different formats and ways and means. The way they articulate it is rather different, but it all succumbs to the same thing, the same theorem, whereby they are stealing. Stealing is a crude word. I know you may not want to subscribe to that, but that is exactly what is happening. Yes, there's development in Zimbabwe without a doubt, but that development is only limited to a cluster of people. Wana John, wana Peter, nana vari kungouya as brokers. That's where they're in there to take their money. They're in there to recover their money forthwith. Kuti ndikutaurirei kuti Joseph ari kuenda kunorima tobacco farm kunyepa. Very few people are going to do that. Inini I only come in kandanzwa kuti jena fozvayakaita. Ndinongotungamidza muchaina wangu. Inini I'm the primary broker. I have nothing to lose. Kwane that kind of monetization politics iriko yatisingaiti succumb to. We are not in a position to define and participate. Kudavos kwatari taura kuti boys handeiko kuti mbonoona kuti warumboti chii because tinoshandisa inonzi justification model kune basa rei maracist and so on. We've got all sorts of, we've got a package of how we narrate our story. Saka, so far we are not out of the woods, but there is some progress in other sectors, especially banana agriculture, yes, but we are not out.
Thank you.
Wow. I think this is quite an interesting discussion. And as we wrap up, as we all noted, we zeroed in on Zimbabwe simply because Zimbabwe is it's now being taken as a guinea pig, even in our discussion. As someone said, it was taken as a guinea pig with the West to tell the whole of Africa what they
statement yakaoma ya torowerwa musaga here pakapei kutya.
Right. I just want to summarize the thoughts that were in the house, and I think Makabai emphasized that as long as we don't cooperate, we just want to, as we will never have a bargaining power. Shumba thinks that we need to have a strategy and we need to have a plan of how do we achieve what we want to achieve. And we don't just become like crying babies, and we need to come together. Jenna has got a story of Zimbabwe there, where he thinks, of course, there are some the global solidarity. He feels our resources are at the mercy simply because we can't compete on the global market, and we are left to be exploited in raw materials. And the guinea pig has always been a theme in his thoughts. Moses says it should start at the classroom, at the grassroots, where our children need to be groomed in terms of the practical subject, not only the academic. He really questioned why should our children be taught religious education. We need to look at tools that China has done. It's not really helpful to have grade 7 or whatever the other subject they are doing. He's one of us who just did 2 subjects, math and English. And he alluded to Silicon Apple when they put their plans in China where they have children who are learning for education. He thinks Zimbabwe had the potential. We had really value. We had Quest Motors in Mutare. Why should we learn about Hitler? Of course, today Umbama Kombe was not short and sweet. He thought he had a lot to say. And his focus is more on the effective communication, being a confessed capitalist. We need to look at, we need to look at our story. What story are we talking about? Because we all talk about our poverty story. There's a lot that he also talks, and his climax was about positive corruption. Because but the world is doing that. And, yes, he acknowledged that there was some development in Zimbabwe. And I think our team, we should now begin to have a strategy of how do we send one of us to Davos. And he feels that when we go to Davos, you come back a different person. So I think it's about the narratives. And I think the overall thing about whether Africa is prepared for disaster, I think the overall theme was around we seems not to be prepared. And given a Zimbabwean case study where we talk about the land reform, we tend to just do things without actually putting structures in place and also a plan to see where we will go next. I think for that, on Tuesday, the young people will be discussing the media and the media and censorship and how it affects how things happen. So tune in at Champion Network TV, and you can see powerful young minds discussing such an important topic. And on Wednesday, we have the renowned Zimbabwean Mr. Mundoma, who will be taking us through how AI is shaping both Africa and the way we do things wherever we are. So tune in and Champion Network TV for all those developments. Don't forget, on Friday, we have got Sungai Mbavu, where we wind down and enjoy we move into the weekend on a lighter mood and laughing and enjoying ourselves. So this is from me and the team at Champions Network TV. And good night until we meet again on Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Our time is not as 8:45. Young people do it at 8 o'clock, which is 9 o'clock, the Southern African time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.